quickly, let's start. So, welcome all. So, this is a webinar 3 of Global Sports Injury Conclave. We did, it's an initiative of Dr. Dayal Foundation. So, today our basic topic is indoor workout for sportsmen. And basically, we want to look out what people do when indoor and what people should do. So, we have got extremely great panel today. We have got, Ramji Srinivasan, the strength and conditioning coach for Team India, and currently
Hi, Varun. Hi, Andrew, legend.
Yeah.
Ramji, g'day, mate.
Hey, good to see you, man.
Hey, man.
Then we've got Andrew Leipus. Again, is a very, very familiar, known face in the country as well. Mr. Murali Kartik, he's a cricket expert now, so everyone wants to follow him as well. Varun Shivdasani, so he's the nutritionist from the UK, joined us. Happy to have him here. And Dr. Onkar Bilgi, the Ayurveda expert.
Hi, Onkar.
And Rajesh from Singapore, he looks after the Singapore cricket as well. So let's start. The first question I think I will put to Dr. Onkar Bilgi. Dr. Onkar, can you tell us what is gut health and why is it important?
Hi, hello all. You want to start the things with me?
Yes, please. Go on.
So basically, staying indoors for athletes, I know it's very difficult, and one of the main things what Ayurveda or the natural sciences of India wants everyone to follow is the best ability to absorb and to allocate your nutrition in the right way. And gut is the main, it has always been a main aspect in Ayurveda. Ayurveda gives huge importance to gut health. Air element is, and there are three basic elements in Ayurveda which is responsible for allocation of nutrition to the body. Even the right distribution in the 7 blocks, which is the skin, blood cells, adipose tissues, bone marrow, and the ability of the cell to reproduce. An athlete actually can give that much time during the lockdown because he's a little, he can take care of his inner self a little bit more, which is it'll actually influence in a right way by which he can put in some extra efforts for the better joint health, because in Ayurveda we consider the gut health and the absorption of calcium and a better condition of the joints. It's a direct correlation there. And as we know, body always changes. A year around in 2019, same day, we may not have the same cells which are sitting on the body or sitting within the body, apart from some dense calcium channels. 96-97% of the body keeps on changing. And is this change, if we can initiate in the right way, taking care of the guts through probiotics, through enemas, through different aspects which can actually keep the gut biome in a very good condition. I think that's one area by which during the lockdown we can as an athlete can take care of himself internally and thus excelling in their respective sport. Yeah.
Thank you. Andrew, this question is for you. With the lockdown and work from home scenario, how can a sportsman or anyone in general keep themselves fit?
Oh, look, that's a massive question, and that's why we're all here to discuss it, I guess. It depends on so many factors. One of those is what your sport is. The other one is what equipment do you have at home and how much space do you have at home. So it's really how long's a piece of string to answer that question. If you are a well-off elite athlete and you've got access to a home gym, then I think you can pretty much mimic a lot of what your normal workload is going to be. If you are an average weekend warrior and you're limited to a small flat without much equipment, then it's going to be very, very different. I think the key, though, is that you just don't stop. The key for me is that you have to maintain some level of workload to make sure that you just don't drop off. Athletes work very, very hard to achieve a certain level of strength, fitness, agility, reactivity, power, whatever, all those different parameters of fitness. And if you take the stimulus away, then that adaptation drops off very, very quickly. So, research has told us that, you just need at least one session a week of something high intensity to maintain a certain amount of those parameters. So if got to be very creative, very inventive, but the most important thing for me is that you don't actually stop. You actually keep going.
Fantastic. And what if a normal person who doesn't have gym at home, doesn't have any equipment, what can he do which can suffice this lockdown period?
What you can do, gee, I'll tell you what, there's a lot of bodyweight exercises that you can do. You just have to search online for bodyweight exercises, and there's plenty of programs out there, from your push-ups to your squats, to your step-ups, to your lunges, all your major muscle group functional movements will suffice. And don't worry about the amount of overload in terms of not having resistance, not having your barbells, heavy barbells. You know, you can do lots and lots of reps, and you'll still actually limit a lot of that drop off in fitness over that period of time of lockdown. So don't despair that you don't have equipment. You can actually do a lot of body weight things in order to maintain, sort of minimize or mitigate that drop off in fitness over that period of time of lockdown.
Fantastic. Thank you. Varun, I'm just straight away coming to you. What is ideal pre-workout meal as per the nutritionist you?
I mean, I think there's no cookie cutter solution really, like Andrew's saying. I mean, I think it's specific to your resting metabolic rate and your what you do, whether you're training aerobically, whether you're training anaerobically. Once again, we're allowed out of the house for an hour, which means you can go for a run, you can go for a bike ride. So it depends on what you're doing, how many times a day you're training. But ideally, really generally speaking, I think if you're an elite athlete, chances are that your body fat's really low, so you're relying mostly on carbohydrate for fuel. So then, once again, an anaerobic activity will use carbohydrate as fuel. And if you're an elite athlete with low body fat, there's not much fuel coming from fat anyway, so you're relying on carbohydrate. But if you're an average Joe at home training and you have plenty of fat stores, then again, it's the selection of what you're doing that counts. If your morning session is going to be an aerobic one where you're going for a run or a bike ride, something like that, then you could potentially maybe allow yourself a little bit of that extra fat in the morning, because that's where your fuel is going to be coming from, as long as you're within the target heart rate. Obviously, the minute you cross that target heart rate on either side, you're using carbohydrate again. So I think that the message from just listening to myself is carbohydrate is probably important. I would in football, we would typically and that's where I spent most of my work is with the football. The week building up to a match day was so match days on a Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday are recovery days. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday are fueling days, working up to a match day. And typically we would look at a 60% carb, 25 to 30% protein, and the rest coming from fat, to work up to a match day. Yeah, so
fantastic, superb. Murali, quickly to you, because now you are the one who has played cricket. You're the premier team ins and outs of cricket. Plus today you are also looking to the cricket mechanism around you. So what's the difference do you find in the fitness mechanism of your time of cricket and now?
Look, I would say good afternoon to everyone. Obviously, that was an informal hi, so just a formal way of saying hi to everyone. Good to see Andrew Leipus in his bedroom and not having set his bed, which is hilarious. But having said that, look, for me, my cricket stretched over 26 years. So the first time I represented Tamil Nadu, the average warm-up was a jumping jack or a run around the ground. There was not, the warm-up was very different. The warm-up was very different. And now, by the time I finished in 2014, or even in between, when I joined the team in 99, 2000, and Andrew is aware of it because he was our physical trainer / physio, because it was all rolled into one at that point of time. The kind of exercises or the warm-ups he made us do, many of us hadn't done that in first-class cricket. And that's because of the different times we lived in and the different concepts to it. I still remember the first time he gave me a TheraBand, and I brought it back post the tour, and Vishan Bedi asked me, what is this? What nonsense is this? Push-ups are still better than TheraBand. And again, the concept of weight training was never there. As a spinner, I was always told that if you do weight training, you are not going to be supple, you're not going to be able to pole spin, which I realized later on that unless and until you're lifting mega heavy weight, you're not going to get that big that it is going to hamper your fitness. Again, now, when you look at the way these guys warm up in the morning, it's a completely different routine. Cricketers play football and other formats just to warm up, and the kind of exercises which they do are very dynamic, which actually happened from 99-2000, and that is where I think there's been a huge change in what Indian cricket has seen. The kind of athleticism which we have noticed amongst the younger group is because of that, because of the changed training techniques. Again, nutrition was never an important part. Can you imagine? And Ramji will again vouch for me. Coming from south of India, for us it was curd rice in the morning going into a game with potatoes or whatever sambar you can think of. So, and as Varun is talking about pre-match fueling in, and all those things have all come up in Indian cricket. So 26 years is a long time, which I've noticed playing the game. The way things have changed have been huge, and even when it comes to protein as well. The intake of protein. Me being a vegetarian, I've played all my life being a vegetarian and traveled being a vegetarian. I've never had any problem being a vegetarian, and I think that is one fad which has changed in the world as well. That you need a lot of non-veg to be strong enough to play international cricket or sports per se. I'm pretty sure that is one thing which is changing, and I'm pretty sure Varun spoke about this, that dal chawal is possibly one of the best forms of protein intake for an athlete. So you can imagine the kind of things which have been changing across. You don't have to have protein shakes. You don't have to have those kind of things all the time. We have got enough and natural substitutes for it. So the world of exercises, the world of sport, and the world of nutrition has changed hugely in the last 30 odd years, 26 odd years. And again, as I said, you look at our modern day sports people, the way they go about things is very, very different. Every now and then when you finish your stint and when they're there for your post-match presentation, you look at these boys training, it is so different from the first time I started.
Extremely useful. Thanks, Murali. I will come to
Ramji.
Ramji sir, what can a sports person do during this time as per you, what you have seen all your life and what you've experienced?
Sorry, I couldn't get the question, please.
What can a sports person do during this time of lockdown?
Okay, there are many ways to skin a cat. Actually, there are many ways to look at things. Again, as Andrew said, depending on the sports person, what they require, needs are different, and it has to be tailor-made according to an individual. It is not one size fits all. And as Murali Kartik said, I completely vouch whatever he has said previously. Things have changed over last 2 decades. I would say as far as things are, sports science has changed, bringing a lot of new information and techniques, technology into the system, the way the players train, the way they have their post and pre-match food or diet, everything has changed. Especially in this current situation, there are a lot of things which you can do in the house, especially again, depending on the sports. You can do your, as Andrew said, elite athletes would have home gyms or the most advanced equipment, whatever they can access to, or else the middle level athletes or what you call poor athletes may not have access to equipments or accessories, but still they can do a lot of body weight exercises and use whatever is available as a tool. For example, if you want to work on your balance and stability, you don't have an RX mat, you don't have a Bosu ball, use a pillow, or use a water bottle, half-filled water bottles or water cans for your extra loading resistance, a half-filled bottle to give you that stability and balance and imbalance so that you work on your neuromuscular integration, coordination exercises. So there are many things which can be done. You have to be a bit innovative. You have to slightly think out of the box in integrating a good level of protocols into the system. Again, depending on individuals, again, depending on skill, depending on sport, kindly consult a professional. I think most of them have their individualized schedule given by their professional trainers or the physios, because this is a time where they can work on their residual biomechanical and neuromuscular deficiencies. This is the best time to do it. Otherwise, there is going to be a huge gap once they start playing it, and probabilities of injury is going to be really high. So best thing to do is set up a program, go for it, and keep changing every 21 days, because you can plateau off and you can hit the wall. Idea is to keep changing, test yourself, keep changing, push it upwards.
Great, sir.
Thank you.
Rajesh, now I come to you. While choosing exercise for virtual sessions, what you been offering to your players at home?
Right. So during this condition, what happens here is, because most of the people, they don't have any access to the gyms or parks. So we are focused on more of the balance and stability work, and at the same time, movement pattern we are working on, because we need to consider this thought as well, that like already Andrew said that they might not have enough space as well at home, or so we need to be creative whether they can step up on the sofa or use a chair at home. If someone have got the bands at home or switchball, so we can accordingly tailor those programs for them. So the bottom line of this is focus is more on the balance and stability work these days.
Good, Rajesh. Dr. Bilgi, I'm again coming to you, because I think immunity is very, very, important for everyone at this point of time eventually. So can you please give your thoughts on immunity for sportsmen required currently?
Oh yeah. Just before that, I'll just address the previous, when Murali sir spoke about the yogurt and this thing. Knowingly, unknowingly, we are doing something good to ourselves. We need not always compare ourselves with something which is coming from outside. It's all research, but we, as anthropology, we have also produced great athletes during the time when we never knew about any so-called physiology, or we were not so much aware clinically about it. Because see, yogurt has its own proteins. Your rice is a starch, and which also the availability of sugar happens very slowly, so you can play for a longer period of time in scorching sun and still give you 100%. There's a prebiotic in the rice in form of that, and the yogurt also has a probiotic component to it. And always remember, for the guts and mind, there is a neuromuscular, there is a neuro connection. When we go for that extra split second decision, it's not always a neuro decision. It has to be a gut decision actually, because gut cells have not evolved over the time. And what happens when I'm talking gut and all about gut, it's something which nothing comes obvious to us. We are trained to just see what is there and just work on that. Give my 100% to what I see rather than what is inside. So it's just a mindful thought process, so that we think beyond what is coming to us, because it can help your athlete to have that extra year, or have during the improve the quality of performance. Apart from that, in terms of yogurt rice also can produce champions. That's one aspect of it. As you go for immunity, there are many aspects. I will first, the breathing pattern. If the athletes can train on yoga, that would be great. What you call visualization, or what we call meditation in older days. These days you need fancy names to quantify something which was already there. So I'll go with breathing synchronized visualization. That would help basically, because breathing will directly help your lymph system to circulate right. Kapalbhati is a pranayam which will really help for the athletes, because they are going to get exposed in the grounds and in the outdoors as immediately, because that's the time they're going to perform outside. So their immunity is going to get challenged. You don't need your athlete indoors performing well, and because of the lack of immunity, going outside, getting exposed, then getting sick. So your breathing techniques are going to help. In terms of diet, a basic turmeric and honey has, with a pinch of pepper, has superb impact on keeping the immunity good and keeping the phlegm away from the respiratory tract. avoiding yogurts at night, having black pepper sprinkled on your salads and in your smoothies, whatever probiotic smoothies you're making with your proteins, though it'll really help. And another aspect is using tree gum. Tree gum is it helps in fiber, because we are doing comparatively less activity even for athletes. It is going to help in two ways: giving good fiber, which will again enhance immunity, and second, it's an excellent source for veg athletes for calcium. So guys, that I can keep going. Use kefir. Kefir is going to really help you to make your smoothies right and limit your calorie content, but still have excellent absorption. So a few things around that. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Bilgi. I'll come to Varun again. Varun, on the similar lines, I want, as a nutritionist, what would you suggest food and nutrition for immunity?
I think we touched upon this in the last last chat we had, and I think making sure your immunity has the macros are responsible for energy and obviously protein for recovery and repair, but what's responsible for immunity is your micronutrients, and making sure you're topped up on your vitamins and minerals every day is I mean, both the water soluble and fat soluble vitamins are super important. The fat soluble ones, the vitamin A and D especially for immunity, are massive. So people who are on like a fat-free diet, I mean, they're severely lacking in a lot of this. And so I mean, just to reiterate what I said last time, I think is just have a multivitamin mineral supplement every day, just to top things up. I mean, as far as the water soluble vitamins are concerned, you can like overdose on them anyway, because your body's just going to get rid of it. So if you're not somebody who monitors your macros and your micros every day by analyzing what you're eating or drinking, or even on a team, if your nutritionist is not doing analysis of food recalls on a regular basis, it's a surefire way of just covering your own base by just getting a multivitamin, multi-mineral supplement in you. So.
Super. Murali, I'll again come back to you. So what do you personally follow in this lockdown in terms of workouts?
Look, it's been a tough one. To be very honest, Rajesh will have a laugh, and actually I've not done too much. My workout at the moment is a lot of jhadu poncha, which is cleaning the floor and doing the jhadu and swabbing the floor, which I've been doing every alternate day.
That's natural for everyone.
Yeah, that is natural for everyone. But apart from that, I just try and keep very active right through the day. I'm not somebody who likes to sleep a lot. But what I've also done is that thankfully I've got a basement in the complex we live. I've got a basement and it's pretty much empty. So I've done a bit of shuttle training every now and then. Every alternate day I go and do a bit of shuttle training, do some exercises over there, and also do some body weight training, as Andrew was saying, because that's the only thing you can do. Just to not massively. It takes me around 40 minutes. That shuttle training, a good intensive 20-minute shuttle training is good enough in this heat to burn off whatever I have at 45 years of age right now. And then, and secondly, as I said, a bit of body weight exercises, keeping active right through the day. And right through my life, I've never been a foodie. So thankfully for me, that has never been an indulgence in whatever form. I'm not somebody who eats sweets or likes to have fancy things. I'm very happy with my simple sattvic food on a daily basis. And I'm fine. By God's grace, I've been fine.
Super. Very nice. Andrew, I'll just come back to you again. So what precautions as a physio can you suggest that people should take during the exercises at home?
Yeah, great question. There's actually quite a few things you can do. I think what I mentioned before about people getting programs off of the internet, those free programs, is that there are a lot of circus tricks out there. And I think we need to look at those things with an air of caution, because safety is number one with any sort of training program. You don't want to hurt yourself. Now, a lot of people are going to be overdosing on Netflix. And as Kartik said, he's doing a lot of mopping of the floors. So you're doing a lot of things which are a bit unusual to your normal routine. So I'm a big fan of keeping mobility around the hips, the lower back and pelvis region. like I said, if you're sort of sitting in a slump position for a very long period of time, watching TV on the couch, in bed, and you suddenly get up and start doing a whole lot of mountain climbers or jumping jacks and things like that sort of thing. Burpees is a big one online. You're going to start getting some soreness in your lower back. So mobility around the hips and pelvis is very important. Choosing your exercises carefully. Don't do things which look like it should belong in Cirque du Soleil. Another important thing. Keep the main thing the main thing. Okay, don't change the main thing, which is just to do some large muscle movement patterns, push, pull, squat, lunge, step ups, that sort of thing. Keep it simple. You can work to fatigue. There's no problem working to fatigue because you're only using body weight. You can't hurt yourself doing that. It's only when you sort of do overloading that you're going to really hurt yourself. Care with changing postures throughout the day. Don't stay in one sustained posture for too long. There's nothing wrong with posture, but it's just sustained postures, which can be a big problem. And if you start to develop a niggle in some area and you can relate it back to a particular program that you were doing or exercise that you were doing, then just sort of back off from that exercise, because access to medical screening and help is obviously a far way away. So use common sense, safety first, keep mobile, and don't do anything stupid that you get off the internet. There's a lot of stuff out there which is potentially very, very harmful if you do it incorrectly. They're the main things for me.
Fantastic. Ramji sir, I'll come back to you again on the same question, just an extension of it. I would just ask how injuries can be avoided as per your, the bigger thought and horizons.
Hello? Can you hear? Yeah, Andrew is stealing all my thunder. One thing, Steve, I would like to make this one very straight, okay? One of the first, as Murali Kartik earlier said, Andrew brought in, and along with him, brought in the system into place in Indian team. I think all of us need to give him a big hand for him as far as these things are concerned. And he did everything alone. Imagine in 99, 2000 or 2002 till 2006 or 3 or 4, he managed the whole team alone, which is not a joke.
No, in 2003, he was joined by Adrian
Ledo. Yeah, exactly.
He was getting the same pay, but he's getting actually more pay for doing nothing.
Adrian came in and he set up the system. Very important, and not to forget the roots, what people did at the initial stages, very important. So these two, Andrew and Adrian, set the base for Indian team. That has to be acknowledged and recognized by all. Okay, coming back to the topic, yes, as Andrew said, you have to be very sensible. Keep it simple and smart, depending on the movement patterns, what you have been suggested. Try not to be too experimental, too adventurous on things. And any sort of niggle or starting off in the initial stages, please approach your physio who is guiding you, or a strength and conditioning person who is guiding you. Keep the line of communication open throughout, and some things is always very difficult to keep things very simple. It can, a lot of bombastic movements can be incorporated and explain things, but keeping things simple is very, very difficult. And it's also a lot to do with your mind, how you apply your mind, very important on that. And like, I would like to say, like, this was Whitney Houston. Once on a lighter note, Whitney Houston, when she won the Grammy, she used to give a list of winners. My grandmother, my grandfather, my grandmother's uncle, grandfather's uncle, etc. A huge list. What happened was, when Rod Stewart won the Grammy, he thanked the Grammy organization and Whitney Houston, because she is told everything, all the names. So similarly, we have to say all these things plus Andrew. Period.
Super. Murali, I'll come back to you, and we're just closing down. So I would like to have a couple of words from everyone. So starting with you, how do you see the future of sports with reference to the current situation?
It looks, it's interesting because every time you think about it and you speak to a few people, you're just wondering, the world is slightly a different place now, and it's going to get even more different. The reason being that all that was thought as norm, I think people are going to have a relook at their lifestyle, relook at the way they're going to go about things. Obviously, travel for a while is a no-no. So many borders are shut, even within the country, within states. Like I'm in Gurgaon right now. I can't even go to Delhi. I can't even go out of my house right now. That's the state of affairs. So you can imagine how things pan out in the next few months, in the next 15, 20 days, and how countries are going to control. Because for any sport to happen, people need to travel, players need to travel. Firstly, they need to train, and that's why many of them would have lost that competitive edge. You can train as much as you want within the house,
Yes.
but for any outdoor sports person, he needs to be out there practicing his skills, which is not going to happen right now. Having said that, that's a completely different scenario. Coming back to what the boards are going to be thinking, we've got so many bilateral series. We've got the World T20 at play. I'm pretty sure that for a while now, there's going to be nothing. I personally feel 10 months to 12 months or to a year, I don't see too many things happening, because early on people used to go to the nightclub, and after getting drunk or having a few drinks in loud places, all you're doing is spitting at one another because you have to shout to be heard. Right now, you're maintaining 6 feet or 6 meters. So you can imagine somebody spitting into your ear after having a few drinks. So that is going to change the way the stadiums are going to be is going to change, because look, at the end of the day, it's all proximity, isn't it? Whether you're a camera crew, or whether you're talking about the crowds coming in, there's a lot of proximity. So till the time we don't realize that the world or this pandemic has completely become zero, people are going to be absolutely apprehensive to travel and do anything which they want to.
Understood.
Very true.
And Andrew, I'll come back to you on the same stuff. I want to just understand basically what's happening now is everyone is indoor doing limited exercises, and once the lockdown finishes, they will all come to the mainstream of the sports. So, what kind of roadblocks do you think, or do you foresee is going to come for players, especially someone is highly into outdoor sports? So, as per you, what's going to be the roadblocks on them?
I think Ramji touched on this before. There's this concept in sports science and sports medicine called acute chronic workload ratio, and it's literally a figure we come up with which can help us predict injury risk. And chronic workload is basically your fitness, and your acute workload is your sort of last week sort of average fitness, or your fatigue. So people are going to come out of this lockdown with very, very low chronic workload or very low fitness, and suddenly get so excited they're going to overdo it. So they're going to have a sudden spike in the load on their body, their stress on their body. And so I think we're going to see a bit of a run on soft tissue injuries, to be honest, as people get very excited as they get back and start kicking balls around or sprinting up hills or diving for catches in the outfield, sprinting between wickets, that type of thing. So I think people have to be very, very careful that they build up their sort of functional workload very, very carefully and not be in a rush. And that would apply to pretty much every sport, every code, unless they've had access to facilities in this lockdown period. So that's my mate. It's good for physio. It's good for business for me. I'm not going to complain, but in private practice anyway. But in a team environment, it's very, very very, very worrying. And I think that administrators, coaches, captains have to be well versed in the fact that this is going to be a reality for everyone for the next couple of months at least. And listen to their sports science staff carefully.
Thank you. Thanks, Andrew. So now what's happening is in India, we have seen there are a lot of unorganized sectors where we don't have proper professional, sessions or advices given to the sportsmen. So we still feel that those people will lack the right guidance to come on the ground and do what the best is. So Ramji sir, just a liner on you on how do you see the future of sports from now to the active sports coming in?
Yeah, it is going to take time. Like I completely endorse Andrew and Murali Kartik's point of view, because it is going to take some time. because of proximity, because of logistics, because of lot of other areas. Especially, you cannot play a match or a game without crowd. What is the motivation? Okay, so take this as
Good.
a end of the day. Take this as a challenge rather than a disaster,
Exactly.
and see a positive angle to it. So try to develop your nuances, working on your nuances and specific parameters, and it is going to
Correct.
take some time, definitely,
Right.
because
Super.
uh,
Super.
access to the ground, access to transport, everything is going to be very difficult. We are in midst of things still, not being very pessimistic, but we have to be realistic about what's going to happen. It's a tough time, tough call for a lot of sports guys. And I like to also add one codicil to what Andrew said is, when they, I think you must be, Varun, you dealing with NFL, wasn't it? We're dealing with NFL players.
A while ago, yeah.
Yeah, I was dealing with a couple of them in 2014 and 15. Before that, prior to that, in 2011, they had a lockout, very similar lockout because of wages issues from March to July, nearly 4 5 months. What happened was massive, they were not having access like what we have now. Huge amount of injuries cropped up, especially Achilles tendon injuries cropped up because of the ground reaction. For they started too many things too soon without getting into specifics. So very important aspect of it is to progression, minimum 3 to 4 weeks before start of the game to get into a skill set mode. Otherwise, you are going to be prone to injuries.
Yeah. Correct.
And that will
Thank
take
you,
some
sir.
time.
Thanks, Amish, sir.
Sometimes,
same thing.
Sometimes I think a decent amount of pessimism is actually reality. Too much optimism, actually, you lose a sense of reality.
Oh, yeah,
True.
true.
I totally agree. Yeah. Varun, just can you also throw some light on the future of sports from now on?
I mean, there's talk about, yesterday in the news, there was talk about the Premier League returning in June and whether to hold the matches. I mean, everybody's spoken about the fans the fans are what make the atmosphere and create the atmosphere. They played under the Australian League. One of the players who's on the verge of retiring is playing for Newcastle Jets in Australia. And he met. I was talking to him a couple of days ago, and he said the last game they played was behind closed doors, and there's no audience. He said it was probably the worst experience of his entire playing career, was just playing a game in a closed stadium, because fans are what make
Exactly.
make the event. I mean, it depends on where you are and what the sport is, but like PSG are speaking to a couple of the players who've refused to take pay cuts. You have Neymar on £600,000 a week, and is just refusing it. So I think there's got to be something that happens, I think, in the future of sport where, just in case, they've got relegation clauses now in their contract. So if they're relegated to the second tier, then they take a pay cut. And I think with this, they're going to say if there's another outbreak, then there's going to be clauses going forward for sports people saying, if something like this happens, then there's going to be pay cuts, and people need to expect that to happen, because but totally, the fans are what, and in Australia, the clubs aren't sustained. The clubs are solely sustained by television rights, whereas over here it's owned by the Sheikh in Qatar and Sheikh in Abu Dhabi and all of them, so the wages can still be paid. But what happens in areas where, but at the lower leagues as well, you look at sort of like League One and below. Clubs are going into administration because they can't support. So financially, I think there's going to be a massive repercussion of this, going forward. Yeah.
Thanks, Varun. Dr. Bilgi, can you just also put your views on this?
I'll take it in terms of a little technical, because you'll have to soon tell the other guy whom you are going to immediately get in contact, apart from your family, that you are healthy. And some parameters is, if you can digitally in the same platform try to have parameters like SpO2 or a temperature or a basic ECG QT corrected markup, something you'll have to keep on doing every day, so that it's one, for your own health, that you're doing good, and second, all these things are directly related to the present pandemic, and you'll have to share it with people apart from just doing a COVID test or something. So that is to log in your apart from your nutrition and workouts. I think logging in these things are going to be very, very important, and to share it with your people who believe for last 14 days, 15 days, you have been in a comparatively healthier. That's going to be the talk. And apart from that, just few things like in terms of dietary, where Varun spoke about the fat, our white butter is in India is going to be key, because it's going to give you K2, which is again important for absorption of vitamin D. Don't buzz away from the tiny pieces of dark chocolates, because it's going to give you those micronutrients to keep yourself calm during the lockdown. Have your meat portions or your grain portions in a proper way, and if you can have your complex carbs, nothing like it. India has many complex carbs which will still help you to maintain your body fat ratio. Apart from that, amla is a good source of vitamin C. Don't go for lemon, at least in India. Reduce your lime intake. Go for more of amla or garcinia, which will also help you to keep your weight or body fat in check. The entire thing is just, guys, we have to be positive. In Indian subcontinent, at least, we have our herd immunity. We have, you call it malaria nation, you call it BCG, you call it our tropical climate, you call so many things, that we have a little edge. We have to be cautious but not worried, and be at least have in the lockdown, it's more of depressing situation, but at least try and be there, that tomorrow there's going to be light after the tunnel. So be positive.
Thank you. Thanks, doctor. So thank you everyone for joining. So we had a session, we had an understanding of everyone. So let me thank Dr. Bilgi, Andrew Leipus, Dr. Ramji Srinivasan, Murali, Kartik,
thank you.
everyone. Yeah, Rajesh. Thanks a lot.
Ramji.
So we'll see you soon on some new stuff then. Thanks a lot for your time, sir.
Thank you all.
Brilliant.
Thank you everyone. Thank you.
All the
Take
best.
care. God bless.
Thank
Bye.
you.
We'll see you.
Cheers.
Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Bye.